on our Bleacher Report live stream for some time now that the Milwaukee Bucks were starting to come to fruition and appreciate and understand that their options for improving their roster around Giannis Antetokounmpo were dwindling. They have been, depleted and emptied their war chest of draft capital year over year, flipping Drew Holiday for Dame Lillard and Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma. And this team now, the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference, that's been 3-12 without Giannis this season. It has all amounted to the rising frustration from Giannis Antetokounmpo that we got pretty strong word last week after Milwaukee's loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder, as the chat is pouring in already. Houston, Golden State, Bulls, Knicks, Spurs. We're going to be talking all of these teams coming up. Keep the chats coming, but back to the top here, that with all these frustrations for Giannis, especially after that Oklahoma City loss last Wednesday, multiple teammates were of the feeling that Giannis definitively wanted out. I spoke to multiple members of the Milwaukee Bucks franchise that were starting to accept that it was time to finally look at trading Giannis and starting over. And we are now officially in a window where the Bucks are listening to trade inquiries from rival teams, and I think there's no team that is at the forefront of all this more than the Miami Heat. We know the New York Knicks are also involved as well, but I think with both of those teams, we'll keep it right there before we mention anybody else. It is, without a doubt, a do it now or do it this summer conversation in Milwaukee. And to keep it focused on New York and Miami to begin with, that is the predicament for the Bucks, now or this summer, for several reasons, because there are positives and negatives both for Milwaukee to move Giannis before February 5th, a week from tomorrow, or wait till this summer. It's complicated. It is not exactly a straight line scenario, and it's not exactly a better situation to do it this summer than there is to do it right now. From a sheer overall asset pool conversation, it's ultimately going to be a better dynamic for, I'm seeing the chat saying you can't hear me. I'm seeing a lot of no audio from the chat. I don't know if that's just the chat or if that's something that the crack production team here can get ahead of here. We're hearing no sound, a lot of no sound. I think I'm going to keep going. We're good on YouTube. A lot of people in the chat still saying they can't hear me. Watch on YouTube, everyone's saying. All right. Well, I'm going to keep going here because there's still a lot to unpack with this debate over whether or not Milwaukee should do this now or this summer. So again, if the Bucks wait until this summer, they're going to have a greater asset pool. Again, keeping it with Miami, keeping it with New York. The Heat and the Knicks will both gain access to 2 more draft picks this summer. And if they wait until after the draft lottery, then all of a sudden they hear a much greater opportunity for understanding where, for example, the Atlanta Hawks draft pick that the Milwaukee Bucks or the New Orleans Pelicans, the most favorable of those 2 picks, will go to Atlanta. All of that will be a known commodity and not this unknown. There's a weird aspect on the trade market with draft picks where it's never exactly a straight through line, but sometimes a future pick without a true understanding of where that will be, sometimes that has greater value. Other times you want to know exactly what that's going to be. Right now, there is going to be more clarity for Milwaukee to wait until after the draft lottery, particularly with Atlanta, particularly with their own pick, because the Bucks are absolutely in a tanking situation right now where Milwaukee has a clear pathway with Giannis out for at least 4 to 6 weeks that the Bucks are going to factor right in to the draft lottery themselves. They get the second most favorable between them and New Orleans. So at this point in time, and we're seeing that the audio is back, so if you're having any issues hearing us, refresh your feed on the Bleacher Report app. The Bucks right now, as the season stands, as the lottery stands, they are positioned to have a top 8 pick going into the draft lottery. So their own slot will be a much different landscape for the Bucks. So think of the Dallas Mavericks a year ago. The fact that Dallas came out of the draft lottery with the number 1 pick overall and Cooper Flagg dramatically changed all of the calculus for the Dallas Mavericks and their situation moving forward. So all of that is the reason why Milwaukee stands to benefit from waiting until this summer. However, on the flip side, on the negative aspect for a Bucks leverage standpoint, this summer, and you flip the calendar year to 26-27, Giannis will only have 1 more year left guaranteed before a player option for the 27-28 season. And what does that mean? That means that Giannis and his agent, Alex Saratzis of Octagon Sports, they'll have some level of influence trying to steer him away from certain situations by threatening that he would not be willing to sign a contract extension. There's also another dynamic at play here where if they wait to trade him until this summer, anonymous user is asking me to say happy birthday. I don't know what your name is, anonymous user. If the Bucks wait to trade him this summer, then there'll be a 6-month post-trade delay deadline for when his next team would be able to sign Giannis to an extension. So of course, no team would really want to be trading for Giannis without a handshake agreement and some type of understanding of what his long-term commitment would be. But until pen and paper are combined, until an actual agreement has been reached and there's a contract agreement, you can't guarantee that Giannis will stick around on an extension until January. That's a big risk for another team to take. So that's why you look at it right now, and there's a greater benefit to Milwaukee in one respect to trade him before February 5th, because you would be a guaranteed 2 playoff run partnership with Giannis, including this playoff picture, this playoff race this spring, and then next year. So with that in mind, it is all a leverage standpoint with Milwaukee, where they will probably get some stronger offers from certain teams knowing that they are going to have him for this time and next season as well. So those are the kind of conversations that the Bucks are going to be having right now. And in talking to several Eastern Conference executives about this, because they're monitoring this situation as much as anyone, knowing that Giannis has preferences in New York and Miami compared to other situations. If Giannis leaves the Milwaukee Bucks, that has been a contender for year after year after year in the East, if he goes somewhere else in the East, it's going to dramatically swing the title chances for Detroit, for a Boston, for a Cleveland that considers themselves right at the thick of every top contender for the Eastern Conference. So I think what the approach that all these teams are saying they would do if they were the Bucks, because they don't have to trade him now, they can wait till this summer, is to go and say, give us this price point right now. The Bucks have all the authority, all the capability to go to Miami, to go to New York, to go to Toronto, to go to any single team that we're to call, whether it be Golden State, whether it be the Lakers, to say, give us this exact threshold right now, or we're just not trading him to you and we're going to wait till the summer. That, to me, is the ultimate leverage standpoint that the Bucks have. They truly have a make us this offer right now, or we are not going to trade him to you and we're going to punt this till the summer. That is their ultimate leverage standing point to exact and to swing around like a big hammer, that I believe they're going to do, because the Bucks have been as aggressive as any team trying to make moves and add to Giannis. I don't see any reason why the Bucks would not be as aggressive as they've been trying to add to him as they will be trying to part with him. The chat, Kenny John 1 says, what do the Bucks want? Well, I think ultimately the clear situation is that the Bucks are going to want to enter a rebuild right now. The Bucks, when they had this exclusive negotiating window with New York in the fall, they did not think that any package around Karl Anthony Towns and established wings and whatever was a serious enough offer. And if you really think about it, Why do the Milwaukee Bucks want to move on from Giannis and their franchise face who helped them win a championship and compete for a title for the better part of a decade? Why are they going to want to flip him out just for stuff that's going to keep them somewhat relevant in the East? They're going to have a top 10 pick as of now, as we talked about at the top of this show. So they have a top 10 pick and Ryan Rollins and a young AJ Green to kind of start this rebuild in Milwaukee. They're absolutely going to prioritize young blue chip talent and draft capital. So that's going to be, no matter what, a starting point and the goal. But as the Memphis Grizzlies are seeing with Ja Morant, as the Atlanta Hawks saw with Trae Young, just because you have a goal of young talent and draft picks doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're going to get. Giannis, as great as Giannis is, a two-time MVP, a finals MVP, a perennial MVP candidate, Giannis is now on the other side of 30. He's had multiple calf strains. The extended history now of lower body injuries is without a doubt concerning to teams around the league. And while if you're trading for him, and there's going to be many teams who are involved, and there will be some type of bidding war, if you are making that type of move for him, there are still plenty of teams who are going to be balking and scared at and of the price of paying Giannis $70-some million, just like Anthony Davis, just like teams are afraid of having to give him that type of extension that he's looking for. Because with this current landscape of the second apron CBA and the limitations that come from having multiple players making $50+ million on your contract, we are definitively out of the 3 max contract model that all of these teams were really trying to chase following the Miami Heat'll days of LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, with Golden State bringing Kevin Durant, with the Celtics loading up their roster to help them win a 2024 championship. Teams are really scared away right now of paying guys $30 million plus, let alone 50, 70. So at this point in time, I'm honestly a little skeptical that we're going to see a full boat, 5 picks, top draft prospect kind of package for Giannis at this juncture. But it's super early in all this. The Bucks have been rebuffing offers for Giannis all along up until this point. So we're still going to sift through what the actual level of offers are going to be, but I can tell you from my conversations around the league, there are definitely plenty of teams who are not so keen on just emptying the boat, just giving everything that they have in their war chest for him, again, because he's on the other side of 30 now. He's had a hell of an injury history in his own right, and then he is going to be requesting and asking a massive contract extension either this summer or once he's traded, and then 6 months after when he gets to January. Regular 8680 saying the Hornets can make a nice offer, but I think the Hornets are still away from such a move. The Hornets are not going to be trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's not going to be a situation where he's going to want to be involved. But the Hornets, I think, are definitely a team to monitor who could be waiting on the wings to be a third team to help facilitate. The Hornets, the Utah Jazz, and the Brooklyn Nets are all eager to play facilitator and take on some draft capital. The Washington Wizards are a team in that mix as well, but we'll talk about Brooklyn later on in a different capacity. Jam and Vibe says send into Miami. They'll add DJ Khaled, Rick Ross, and Daddy Yankee to send in the deal. The Heat are definitely a spot to keep an eye on, and I think are going to factor in prominently here, and we can move to that on our rundown here, not for several reasons, because number one, back before Giannis signed his extension in 2020, after the Bucks traded for Jrue Holiday, before that, the Heat and the Dallas Mavericks, I've been reporting this for 6 years now, the Heat and the Dallas Mavericks were the 2 teams that Giannis had a wandering eye for back in 2020. Again, that was before the Bucks traded for Jrue Holiday and reaffirmed Giannis's commitment to the franchise, and then they went on to win that 2021 NBA championship. And I think Giannis has had interest in Miami ever since. There's also young enough pieces that I think, and have been told, are definitely on Milwaukee's radar. Tyler Hero, who did not come to an extension in his own right, with Miami this fall is a Milwaukee native, someone who's been an all-star. Khalil Ware is a player that I think has a varying valuation around the league. Some people are super, super high on Khalil Ware. Other people, dating back to the draft, part of why he fell into the into the teens. They have been skeptical about Khalil Ware's motor and his work ethic, which are both things that Eric Spoelstra has commented on throughout his career so far in Miami. But he's still clearly a high upside player that has a ton of interest around the league. The Heat also have Kaspar Shakachunas, a recent rookie first-round selection, Jaime Jaquez. They have a trove of young, recent first-round draft selections, in addition to having access to 4 first-round picks this summer that will be very attractive, I think, for Milwaukee overall. And we've been told pretty definitively that while we talked yesterday about that there's definitely been some discussion between Golden State and Miami about Jonathan Kuminga for Andrew Wiggins, the Heat have been holding out hope that they could use Andrew Wiggins' near $30 million salary to help them approach a star player's salary, and Giannis makes $54 million. He would be, of course, at the top of the list of star available players that the Miami Heat are going to chase. Emerald Dolphin says, if the Heat give, what about Bam and Hero and leave Giannis with nobody? That is going to be the predicament for all these teams. You cannot trade for Giannis and totally empty out your cupboard and leave him with a basically identical situation that is in Milwaukee right now. You need to have enough of a supporting cast around him, and that's why I definitely think Miami is not going to be making the move for him if they have to sacrifice Bam Adebayo as well. There's another indicator there, or a piece of all this, that Bam Adebayo and Giannis are both represented by Alex Saratzis, and you can rest assured that those two guys have had some type of dialogue about playing together over the years. I think Bam would have to be sticking around in Miami. There's no real reason for the Heat to make that move without signing him. Not to say that Bam isn't worth Giannis or that Giannis isn't better than Bam, but to that question, you can't really make that aggressive of a move and not have a legitimate all-star caliber running mate with Giannis, because we're seeing what that situation has amounted to in Milwaukee right now. Again, the Bucks are 3-12 without Giannis this season. So you absolutely have to be keen on, if you're Miami, if you're any team, on having enough pieces around him, just like the Phoenix Suns tried to do with Kevin Durant and did not want to give up everything, did not want to give up Devin Booker. Like, the whole point of adding him right now is bringing in him next to Bam Adebayo, not getting rid of him. Aiden Stores 4166 says he needs to hear my number one most likely landing spot right now. Honestly, my feeling at this juncture, and we're still early in all this, a whole week between now and the trade deadline, things are going to change. My feeling at this point in time is that Milwaukee is going to use this next week, these next 8 days, to try to get a real understanding of what teams are willing to offer, and then ultimately move him in the summer. And at that point in time, I think Miami looms to me as the most likely spot because of Tyler Hero, because of Khalil Ware, because of their other young pieces, because they'll have the draft capital, because Miami is a spot that we've been hearing for years Giannis would be open to extending in. All those factors, to me, shape Miami into being the most likely spot, but come this summer. Zach Attack 1295 says the Knicks don't have the assets. Miami and San Antonio do have the assets, but OKC would be a no-brainer if he really wants to win. So that brings us to New York, because I agree. The Knicks don't have the assets that a San Antonio or an OKC does. Stellar Wind is saying Rockets, ? Look, the Rockets, in theory, could put together a compelling package, but to me, Houston already made their major all-in move for Kevin Durant this summer, and I don't see them having the plan and the appetite for parting with Alperen Sengun or Amen Thompson to make this work. I think Kevin Durant was their all-in veteran addition, and they're trying to build this thing around him and Sengun and Amen Thompson, and they're looking at more of a smaller situation. But The Knicks are also in a similar predicament. They know that Giannis has liked them. They know that they had an exclusive negotiating window with him, and is something surrounding Karl Anthony Towns going to be enough? It wasn't in the fall. It was not in the fall. And it's difficult to kind of really gauge what exactly went in those trade talks, but it would have to have been something with Kyle Kuzma also going to New York, and then another piece, Mikal Bridges, an OG Anunoby going to Milwaukee as well. So that's why, I think there was that rumor about that Zach Lowe talked about in his podcast. There was a rumor that was absolutely going around of a 3-team construct between Portland and New York and Milwaukee. I definitely think Portland is going to be a factor here. I've been told pretty definitively that Giannis has zero interest in going to Portland. For years, him and Damian Lillard were talking behind the scenes. I've mentioned this on past Bleacher Report streams that him and Dame were in a group chat by connection through Pat Connaughton. And, of course, Dame ends up going to Milwaukee. But the Blazers have the 2028 through 2030 draft capital of Milwaukee from that Drew Dame trade of 2023. So I do think that they are a team that's looming on the periphery here. Can they use those draft picks to add to their group? I know the Blazers are poking around as being some type of buyer. Drew Holiday's name has come up a lot in the last week. There's been some buzz about him and Giannis wanting to play together. So there's definitely some connective tissue there. But I think it's more likely that they would factor in as a third team and not the actual destination. New York will probably need a third team's help in order to get Giannis right now, because they don't have the draft capital to really compete with the likes of Miami even right now that has 2 firsts available. To my understanding, the Knicks don't really have a first-round pick to trade. So you're going to need to potentially rope in a third team like a Portland, like a Brooklyn maybe, to potentially get that in there. Calibivan94 says Scoot, Jeremy Grant, Tybal swap rights back, and Milwaukee 2029 first back. I'm assuming that's for Giannis. Again, I don't think Giannis going directly to Portland is a thing, but I do think Giannis potentially going to Golden State is a thing. And we wrote this last week on the Stein line, my joint Substack effort with the Hall of Famer Mark Stein. Again, if you're not subscribed to us there, we have been putting out content every single night before I come to you here every single day. We wrote that the Golden State Warriors have no interest in trading Jimmy Butler for Anthony Davis after he tore his ACL. We wrote that the Warriors have basically all but assured Jimmy Butler they are not going to explore his trade market so long as Giannis didn't ask out and make it official that he wants to leave. And we're in that situation right now. So until February 5th at 3 p.m. Eastern, that buzzer sounds, and Giannis is not a Golden State Warrior, I'm going to believe and have been told that the Golden State Warriors are going to explore ways to turn Jimmy Butler and his contract after he tore his ACL and is now out for the foreseeable future into Giannis Antetokounmpo. There's definitely been some level of interest from Milwaukee and Jonathan Kuminga in the past. So what else would that mean in terms of money going back? Because Jimmy Butler and Giannis are a straight salary match, essentially. So there have to be more money coming from the Bucks. But I'll tell you, the Golden State Warriors have had their eye on Giannis for years. He's always been the gold standard of what their ultimate pairing would have been, not Jimmy Butler. They tried to get Kevin Durant a year ago as well. They've always been looking at upper echelon superstars to pair with Steph ever since Kevin Durant left them in 2019 free agency. Giannis has been at the top of their list. So now that he's finally in play, you can rest assured that Golden State is going to explore how... Sorry, I'm just reading text here. Golden State is going to explore how likely that is to flip that around. So, again, I'm not saying it's definitively going to happen, but the Warriors are going to look at what else they need to add to Jimmy Butler and Jonathan Kuminga to try to get into this sweepstakes and get Giannis Antetokounmpo finally from Golden State, from Milwaukee and to Golden State. Raj B770 is asking San Antonio odds. We've heard pretty definitively all along that the Spurs and the Thunder and the Rockets are all not going to be too actively involved here. But before we get out of here for today's show, other teams that could be in play for Giannis. There's two teams that I want to mention. There's three teams that I want to mention. And the Magic are on there too, because this is just a hypothetical. Someone in the league who I really respect pitched me the idea. Again, not reporting this, just an idea. Said, who says no? Paolo Banchero for Giannis. The Bucks leadership at the time of drafting Giannis was Jeff Weltman and John Hammond. They're running Orlando right now. And obviously it hasn't exactly been the cleanest season in Orlando, with mounting questions about Paolo and his relationship with Jamal Mosley. I'm not expecting that to be a situation, but it's one that someone pitched to me the other day and I thought was really interesting. Three teams that I do think will be involved: the Raptors, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Brooklyn Nets. The Raptors have just been poking around on what they can do with Emmanuel Quickley's salary, with RJ Barrett's salary, with Jakob Poeltl's salary. You know, they poked around on Anthony Davis before he got hurt. We heard they were the one real team other than Washington that was checking on Trae Young. They're definitely still looking at Domantas Sabonis. And I would absolutely be shocked that they're not calling Milwaukee about Giannis Antetokounmpo right now as well. It would be pretty ironic if the Raptors finally got him after Masai Ujiri left the organization, because that's always been a dream, whether it was Kevin Durant or trying to go after Giannis. Those were two things that, you know, we always heard were really in Masai's, you know, crystal ball of his biggest wishes. And Toronto's been aggressive in signaling that they're looking to see what they could flip their salary for. So if they could figure out a way to appease Milwaukee without getting rid of Scottie Barnes or Brandon Ingram, I would be shocked if they're not trying to do that. The Lakers, I mean, the Lakers are the team that chases stars just like Miami. Giannis had some interest in playing with Luka back in 2020 when he was in Dallas, of course, and that was a situation Giannis had his eye on there. The Lakers are going to call. They are always going to call. And then Brooklyn. Brooklyn is the most complicated because aside from Michael Porter Jr., they don't really have any established infrastructure right now of a winning situation, contributing veterans, what have you. But the Nets have as much draft capital as any team to trade for Giannis first and then turn to him. And just like the Clippers did with Kawhi and Paul George, or years ago, this is the most important source that's calling me right now, my mother. Years ago when the Boston Celtics traded for Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen at the same time to pair him with Paul Pierce. There's always been talk that the Nets have seen themselves as Giannis's next team, and originally, before they made the Mikal Bridges trade that gave them all this draft capital to go out and get any guy that Giannis would theoretically want with him, I always heard rumblings that Giannis was the white whale that they always wanted. Mama Fisher the GOAT. Shout out Graham A-Team. So it's early. We're going to continue to sift through all this stuff. Dinero in the chat says Hawks ? Atlanta is a team that Giannis wanted to go to originally in the 2013 draft before Milwaukee swept in and got him. The Hawks interviewed his agent Alex Aratzis for their president job this past summer, but they're not making that 2026 pick. That's the Bucks or the Pelicans pick available. They're not making Jalen Johnson available. Without either of those two assets on the board, I just don't see Atlanta really as a realistic fit right now. That's it. There's some other good questions in here, but I want to save some of this other stuff because we got a show tomorrow, a show Friday, and again, we're coming back to you every day, Monday through Thursday next week, and Friday as well. So great questions in the chat. Plenty of teams we've talked about here. We're going to keep you updated on a daily basis on Bleacher Report, and again, on the Stein Line, my joint Substack effort with the Hall of Famer Mark Stein. But for now, really appreciate all the enthusiasm. Apologies for the audio issues at the beginning of the show, but we appreciate you tuning in, bearing with us, and we hope to see you next week. We moved it up today because the news was so exciting, but barring any foreseeable change, we're coming back to you tomorrow, Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on the one and only Bleacher Report app. See ya.